I'll say welcome to everybody. Good morning, good afternoon. I think it's super early morning and evening for some of you guys attending live. And I want to say thank you for those of you that happen to catch the replay that is on YouTube. My name is Stephanie Olson. I'm a LAMP educator for the Center for AAC and Autism, and this is our Autism Awareness Month Beyond Words. We titled it Supporting Bilingual Autistic Communicators, and I'm really excited to spend time with my colleague and my friend, Lydia MacKay. Lydia is a unicorn. She's a unicorn. Bilingual and has a background in as a speech language pathologist, a deep background in assistive technology, as well as a background as a what do we say, a behavior analyst, or you have a BCBA background as well. And she'll be speaking today about her experiences in the field. I do want to just let you know that those of you attending live, we have the chat open for you, which I will be moderating, but I invite you to ask questions, and you will find that you should see the Q&A on the menu bar for you. And if you have questions for Lydia as she's speaking, we're going to just try to have a conversation, and I'll stop. And if there's a question that pops up, I'll ask her. Those of you that are attending live, you will receive an email after today's event with links to everything that we're talking about today. And you will also have a link to your certificate of attendance and a link to the recording. Just know that Zoom sends it out exactly 24 hours after the end of the training. So it will happen tomorrow for those of you attending live. So let me stop my share, and then I will switch this over. There we go. And give Miss Lydia the host controls. And then I'm also going to pin you. So hopefully as we're talking, you are
okay.
Front
And Steph, did you want to start with the poll for people? Did you want to?
Oh, sister. Do you see the polls in your, I'm so glad that's why you're here. Do you see the polls in the menu?
I don't, but
Okay. Let me reclaim the host because maybe I have to do it. Okay, we do. I can't believe I forgot. We were so excited about this. All right.
I'm excited that you made them. So,
okay, we have some polls for you. All right, so I'm going to launch a poll, ask you a question. Who are you? We're curious to know who's here today. Who made the time to come on a Saturday? We got our peeps for sure represented, our SLP peeps. Fantastic. I'm going to wait till we get to about 85% participation, and then I'll close the poll. Looks like we're winding down here. Okay, so let me share these results. Are you guys seeing all that?
oh, nice.
Cool.
Welcome, parent.
I know, the singular parent. And I'm seeing in the chat window that we have some teachers,
Yes.
some masters of ABA. Wonderful. Okay, so I'm going to stop that one, and let me do another. We have a couple of polls. I don't do this very often, so I do seem awkward. Okay, so we've got another poll. This is a fill in the blank. So what languages are you supporting? Yeah, I wish on that previous poll we had a way to, instead of other, to have people write in their other.
Mhm.
All right, so we're getting some good answers on the poll. Hopefully you guys can see it there. Some of you are answering it in the webinar chat, which is fine. But we've got, since I'm launching it, I can't really see where it lives.
Gen Ed teacher, SLPA, welcome. We have a lot of different people from a variety of backgrounds today, so that's
Yeah.
exciting.
Okay, looks like we're getting close to having a good percentage of people answer our poll. Kelsey's working towards status too. All right, so I'm going to end the poll now. Question 2, what languages are you supporting? It's funny, I can't actually see the answers. Are you seeing them?
I'm not. I see 100% of people answered, and it says answer 1, fill in the blank. Whoa.
Well, folks, that's what you get when you experiment live on national TV. It didn't work.
But toward the end, the nice thing is I have a Padlet to share with you. It's not my Padlet, but it's from Gloria Soto. Dr. Soto is at San Francisco State University. There are a variety of languages because we are all going to encounter students, people, families, and we don't speak the home language. So that's very common.
So folks are saying they can see their own answer. So yeah, maybe we'll use the chat. I do have another poll.
Ooh, Asian, Khmer, Spanish. Wow.
Yeah. So if you want to pop that in there, Nepali and Spanish, French,
Spanish, English,
Farsi and Urdu,
Ooh,
Tagalog, ASL.
Wow.
Yeah.
Persian, yeah.
Spanish, Persian.
Bosnian, yeah.
Okay, this is just fascinating. How are you people supporting all those languages? Okay. Okay, fascinating. Let's see if question number 3 is going to work for us.
Let's give it a whirl.
Let's see.
Somali, Hmong, ASL. Wow.
Okay, that one's not working. Let's see question number 4. All right, well. Oh, a poll result is being shared in this meeting. How do I stop that? And it ended. Okay, well, you know what? I just can't stop sharing. That's what I have to do. Okay, now I can launch this one. Okay, let's see if this one works. How comfortable are you supporting AAC users who are exposed to a different language than yours? 0 being uncomfortable, 5 being comfortable. I really love learning from the participants and learning where everybody is. Okay, I'll wait till it gets to about 75% answer participation. And we are there. I'll share these results. Are y'all seeing that? Okay, so pretty much in the middle. I'm going to stop sharing that. And then we have our last question. So how comfortable are you supporting multilingual students, clients, families? Did I just duplicate that question? Is that just basically the same one repeated?
It's a little similar.
Yeah, we were preparing this 30 minutes ago. Yeah, because I was having trouble with this question. I think we're going to get a similar answer here.
I do love those polls, though. It's faster than Menti, and
yeah,
I like a word cloud. I love a good word cloud, but
yeah, I think this one's a little bit different, though. A little bit more varied.
Oh, yeah. Probably depends, right? I mean,
yeah. All right. Well, enough of us entertaining ourselves. We're going to get to the meat of it. I'm going to make you host.
Okay. Share.
Thanks, everybody, for participating in that. I'm going to mute myself here.
Let me just do my little slideshow. slide. Oh, let me see. Hold, please. There it is. Okay, and then I'm gonna go in. Slideshow. Play from start. I want to make sure everyone can see this. Can everyone just see the slide and not the edit mode? Otherwise, I might need to reshare. Okay, we're good.
Good.
So I'm not going to just talk at you, but there are some slides. And what Steph and I want to do is have a little bit of a conversation. I'll kind of go through some points. There's a little bit of research. Again, today is just scratching the surface. And I just wanted to share with you a little bit about how I've supported bilingual, multilingual students. Right now, I'm in 2 preschools. One was more multilingual. The other is monolingual English. And a good 30 to 50% of the students are autistic. And I also do AAC trainings with families in the state of Arizona, and I come across a wide variety of people. So far, my experiences have been just supporting families who speak Spanish. But again, in my limited experience, I hope you guys get some tips and just a different way to frame supporting multilingual families. So thanks for listening. And again, please put some questions in as we go along. This is kind of what we're going to talk about today. What is multilingualism, bilingualism? What is translanguaging? Because this is a term that is relatively newer. And a couple of tools and strategies and some of the ways that I've used Lamp Words for Life in Spanish, English, just to share with you some things that I've done, and I'll tell you some stories. We'll talk about barriers, but we're not going to spend a lot of time on the barriers. We all know what some of those barriers are. We experience them every day. This is my lovely disclosure slide. I am an educator with the Center for AAC and Autism under PRC Saltillo. All right, and so one thing to think about is, and I know it's weird to say this, but people don't really think about a dominant language anymore. And the research kind of shows this to be true. So when we say someone's multilingual or bilingual, it's anyone who's exposed on a regular basis to more than one language. And it doesn't mean you have a complete mastery of either one. I was raised bilingual until a certain age, about 5 or 6, and then I rejected Spanish. And then I kind of had to catch up a lot. But if you were to ask me what language I feel more comfortable in many environments, it's going to be English, right? In other environments, I'm very comfortable in Spanish. And those of you that speak more than one language may say the same thing, unless you are very fluent in either and were raised simultaneously speaking at least 2 languages. And I thought I'd touch on translanguaging. That comes out of bilingual education. The older mode was, we're going to do language immersion. We're only going to learn only in one language. We're not going to incorporate our other language knowledge. And the notion of translanguaging just says all individuals use their entire modalities. So I might use my Spanish in one mode. I might use my English. I might put them in the same sentence, but I'm going to make use of what I already know instead of just trying to use one language at a time in a certain environment. And again, if we're looking at AAC, this can apply to AAC. AAC is a modality. It's sort of a language, if you will. And you can see here on the slide, we know that there are benefits to doing this. And research shows us that that helps. When I incorporate what I already know from maybe my home language to make sense and understand of things in a different environment. And again, there's lovely research that supports that, but we know there are benefits. All right, and we were going to talk briefly, you can read this slide, some of the barriers. These are all the things that we encounter as speech language pathologists. The one that is hard also is our biases about multilingualism. Some of us might work in schools where they say, hey, this is English, we're not going to support the other language. And you run up against some administrative difficulties, right? Other districts are more flexible. So all of us experience these things. we have limited opportunities. And again, as providers, a lot of us say, gosh, we don't have time. In between what are we going to be supporting multilingual users? What would that even look like? Again, I really feel that ethically, I'm obligated to try to support somebody's home language because I can see the benefits. And that also applies to AAC use as well. And a lot of research says the best thing to do is to try to do a really good assessment of a multilingual individual. And then also, how are we going to be supporting their language? I view it as a right. And again, other good stuff, we know that this supports our families. If you love to look at articles, if you look at a family systems approach, think about it this way. Having an AAC device come into the home is a little disruptive. It's new. And it doesn't matter if you're multilingual or monolingual, it's a shift change in your family system. And so our goal is to kind of get balance back and try to incorporate the device in a successful way as much as possible. Those of you that support people in the home, or to incorporate it into a classroom in a way that's more natural.
Lydia?
Yes, ma'am.
I have a really great question that kind of fits in right with what you were just speaking about. It's an anonymous question, but it says, would you consider AAC another language, arguing that the students who use AAC are exposed to two spoken languages, are multilingual?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of view it that way, or I would say it's another modality. So sometimes when I'm working with my paraprofessionals, it's another mode. So the jury's out on that. I'm not an expert in whether it is a language. To me, I loosely think of it as another language. It's another way to express yourself, but I also tend to call it another modality. But I would say other languages are modalities. So
yeah,
I'm very smart about answering that question, but
well, I mean, it's such a great question because we can take it from the lens of the AAC user, but then we can also expand out to their communication community. And, you know, it's kind of interesting because to those communication partners, it may very much seem like another language.
And I do think of AAC devices as a tool, because what we're teaching individuals or supporting them in, what are we supporting them with, is language, right? So we are sharing word meanings. We are providing supports for learning language, period. And when working with multilinguals, that can mean words from a different home language, right?
Well, thank you. Keep the questions coming, folks, and we'll pop them in.
I don't want to just be talking at you. This slide just gets you going. Just to share with you, I've done a lot of routines-based AAC interventions, and that can be the school routine, right? So those of you that are teachers, I often come in and I want to know the whole routine that is around the student. And I want the paraprofessionals to tell me all these stories about that particular student because they know them best. I do the same thing when I go into a home. Even for monolinguals, for everyone, I go in and I want to establish, what are your routines? What are your family priorities? And I don't just ask them in a questionnaire. I try to get them to tell me stories, because some people don't like that linear question answer format, right? So I sit down and I tell them, this might seem unusual. I always say that, but I want you to tell me about your routine. Who gets up first in the house? What happens next? And really go through the whole routine. Because those of you that work with AAC, it's very strange for a speech therapist to come into someone's home and tell them that they need to use the device at mealtime. That might be what we want them to do, but that might or might not be what the family wants. So I always go with the routine first. So yeah, it looks kind of backwards, but I do spend the time. I do have only a certain amount of AAC training hours when I go into someone's home. But I think it's time well spent. And I inform the parent and I always ask them for feedback. How's this going? How would this feel? Is there what time of day and what routines would you like to support that person with? Sometimes families tell me, I don't use the device at all at home. So that comes up often. And often they know that John Halloran from the co-founder of the Center for AAC and Autism, he talks about a love language. Oftentimes families know exactly what that person uses all their other modalities. So you have to be accepting of that and not get uncomfortable when they tell you that. But we try to say, oh, this might help them in another environment. So let's think of a word or two that you could playfully introduce. And again, I have them choose the words. The parent and the child choose the words, not me. So be pleasantly surprised at some of the words that you find out could be really exciting for that individual. So I spend the time to try to find that out. This is kind of what I just said. Families have different beliefs about communication, about play, about language. But rather than stereotype people, you have to be very careful. Sometimes, this was back in the day because I'm dating myself. Sometimes people would say, oh, such and such culture, they don't like eye contact, or such and such culture, they don't play with their children this way. And I say, instead of coming in with that, find out what that particular family has as their values within their particular culture, because it may be very different. So you have to just, the best way to find out is to ask them to tell you stories and tell you about some of the things that they naturally do. And so you're going to find out really quickly what things they prioritize. So again, ask. It sounds so simple.
It does, Lydia. And I know today is about translanguaging, multilingual, bilingual individuals, but this really comes down to the microculture of every single family unit, whether it's a single parent and a child, or a larger extended family that, the AAC user is moving from one home to another kind of situation. And there's a singular language being spoken in all of, it's
Yeah.
such good advice.
And this was a little bit of a rabbit hole I went down, because one of the things I love about AAC and working with a variety of families and individuals who use AAC, it's almost, you're doing kind of an ethnography, right? You're coming into someone's home. What are their values? What is the system? Who does what? What is the routine? And I know a lot of us go, well, we don't have time for that. There are some resources at the end that you can start using. So today is just think about it. Don't get overwhelmed, but know that your goal is to really be very family centered, no matter what language, again, monolingual included. And I often invite the family, I invite the child to attend, because sometimes people think that they have to act like a therapist at home and there's a lot of pressure and stress. And I start very small and I offer to demonstrate. And then I say, would you like to try? They might not want to try yet. So again, you have to build trust and you have to build the relationship.
Mm-hmm. Lydia, I'm curious. Do you see any common themes, regardless of mono or bilingual or culture? Do you see some themes that emerge regardless of who you're coaching along, regardless of specific values that are important to families?
Well, it's different, but at home, one of the overarching ones is family members' names and playfulness. If there are any siblings involved, play. Even if the parent doesn't directly play with the child, but they set up the situation so the person can play. But again, I would say family names, like who's in the family, and getting those things down can really open up a whole world. And then the family knows that you care about who's in their family. It sounds so tiny, but it's very important. It's a good jumping off point.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Interesting.
We're going to have a bunch of QR codes. You're going to see these again. But you're probably wondering, oh, that's great, but how do I get started doing that? There are questionnaires. There are tools that you can use to get started. There is a bilingual Spanish year of core. I will say I don't do a core word of the week or month, because a lot of my students, we're just working on 2 or 3 core words across a routine. So again, those of you that are teachers, what's the teacher's routine? How can we insert a couple of words that would be joyful, playful, or just let them know the next thing we're doing? How do we give kind of that language input to them, right? So again, I don't stay with a core for only a certain amount of time. Some of my people I work with work on go, up and down and more for quite a while. So it's not regimented, but it's there for you to take and use.
Yeah, I do. This is perfect time to ask you this question. Megan said, I love the idea of families choosing vocabulary to get buy-in from the family. What are your thoughts if they want to focus only on fringe rather than core?
So when I explain it to my families, because I do speak Spanish, and there's some parents that when I explain to them, because they do encounter two languages, I use that to talk about core. Of course, we need nouns. So for me, it's not an either or situation. I usually say, and again, I go back to routines. The first step is, what are your routines? And of course, I'm always thinking of core words because they're right on the front page. They're very frequent. So I do say that to families. I don't discourage them using the thing that they want. I think that's fantastic. But sometimes, again, it's all routine driven. I worked with families where they love to take the kid on their back and throw him down on the couch. So I said, hey, if you guys do that a lot, you can throw so-and-so down on the couch 3 or 4 times, and then you can go there and just say down or abajo, right? Again, I invite them to think about that word and they wind up choosing it. So I say to them, you speak Spanish, you speak a little bit of English. What if you moved to a country where you had to speak German or Mandarin, right? You would want to know those words that you can use no matter what the activity is. And that's how I get the buy-in there. But again, if I'm using routines based with the parent, I'm sort of putting in some words that are already highly frequent that can be used across a variety of activities. So that's a great question, though.
Yeah. And we talk about core, high frequency core words being universal. Have you found, as you've worked with different family cultures and little microcosms, that there are some core words that are not universal? Or
Yeah, it's funny. So in Spanish, the word ir for go, it's done a little bit differently. So for me, and Gloria Soto did a nice study where she looked at Spanish core. There are core words in every language, as we know. There's some overlap, but again, you're going to find that there are some differences where that might be not the most frequent way to say it. So again, I often ask the family, what do they say when they're talking about that activity or concept? So let's use that word. So yeah, there's some overlap, but then there's some tiny differences where I go, we're not using that word go as much like we might in English. It's a different word.
Okay, I'm just going to ask you this question. Well, and there was a question about the resources. So Lydia is showing you QR codes to resources. We have a resource document. I've posted it in the chat, and you will get it in the email as well. And it'll be on the description of the YouTube channel. Okay, so Alexis asks, what if you don't speak the language? My kid will frequently switch to Spanish, but then I don't understand what he is saying.
Yeah, and that's tricky. So what I encourage people to do, let me go back a slide. So there are many times you might not know, but sometimes when we're talking about being culturally responsive and always learning something new, I take that as an opportunity to try to learn a few words. I work right now. There's a little student who speaks Arabic and English at home, and I'm just starting out with AAC at school. And right now I've only been using English, so it's on me. I need to have a conversation with the family. What are some of the words? So again, that's on me to go with my parent and at least find a few routines and words. And sometimes I notice what this little one is verbalizing, and I don't recognize it, but it might be a word he's saying, but I don't know. So I think sometimes if you have bilingual people if you're at a school, or if you know bilingual people, some of you who might be lucky enough to work with people who can help with interpretation, I would find out what that word is and why they like it so much. So you might learn a simple word in Spanish. If they keep switching over, there's something about it that they're trying to communicate. So I would be very curious to find out, what does that mean? So I don't think you have to know Spanish any more than I would know Arabic. I only speak 2 languages, right? And most of us speak 1 for the most part. So it's an opportunity to kind of learn a little bit about another language and find out why they love it. Hope that makes sense.
I think so, yes. And we don't have any more questions right now. So other than I apologize. I sent the resource documents to myself and Lydia. So now I'm going to send it to everybody.
This slide is just a reminder. I participated in a project with Gloria Soto in San Francisco State, and she did some research with Michael Clark. This is I think it's a dissertation study. This is just called action research. So we all know we need to support multilingual families, but what does that look like? There is a lot of research as to how to exactly go about doing that. It's still very young, but this is a method that I did when I was part of her project. I made a very concrete, measurable plan. I acted on my plan. I did a lot of reflection, and I was always revising my plan. Sometimes my plan went really well, and sometimes my plan went very not well. And I learned a lot. And I'll just share a couple of those slides with you. This is a family that I learned a lot from because I did about 8 sessions of training. This person had difficulty scanning. I used lamp words for life, and it didn't look like what you see there. I had many, many words available. We put in family names. I thought we were doing great. And this little one he went from place to place and didn't seem very interested in the device. And I just assured the family, let's pick 1 or 2 words. And they did. And then I came back every month and we built up again. When the child started going to school, the parent said, "Oh, can we switch apps?" And I said, "What? Why? Can you tell me why?" And the teacher was having them hit a switch for more. And so the parent hadn't been bringing the device to school. I mean, I had encouraged them to, but they just hadn't been doing it. And I tried to have a conversation with the teacher. I never was able to get in touch with the teacher. So I went back in the home with the parent. And again, I just explained, hey, let's unhide these words because during evaluation, he did a nice job. I learned something though, by spending more time with the family. That little one used to run away from me because what I do is consultation. I'm not directly working with the child. He wanted me to clap hands really fast. And so when I spoke to mom said, "Oh, he'll drive you bananas. He'll do that all day if you let him." And I said, "Hey, I've got a word we might be able to show that he might really get joy out of." And that word was rápido, fast. And I programmed it in English and Spanish. He could switch. And again, I didn't leave it that way because that's very limiting. But just to build that joy for 2 or 3 minutes, we started to be on our way. I learned a lot. Everything I thought I had done with this family, that we had trust and everything was good. She was way too polite to tell me that she didn't really see him using it. She was too polite. So you're going to encounter that. And I went back to work on that with her and get more feedback. So that's lesson 1. This other family I worked with, it took, again, about 8 or 9 months. Extended family names were very important. We did all of that in Spanish first. Everything was pronounced beautifully, right? And then on the English side, we also just kind of copied that page over so that the names were still pronounced beautifully on the English side. And one of the favorite snacks, back to core and fringe, paleta, popsicle. That was this child's first chosen word. She wanted it so badly, and she had to navigate 3 pages to get there, and she did. And the mom was hesitant. She was very honest with me. She's like, "This is way too many words. I'm overwhelmed." And I said, "Okay, I'm going to leave it on Vocab Builder for a little while. I don't love that, but you're telling me to slow down, so I'm listening to you." The device needed some repair. Mom didn't know how to turn Vocab Builder back on. She didn't know how to hide the words. So she just left it open. And lo and behold, when I came to visit again, she said, "Oh my gosh, my child is making associations now. She wanted a kiwi, but she didn't know where that was, but she knew where the color green was. And she said verde. She wanted her green fruit." So again, small moments. What a happy accident that she was too embarrassed to call me to ask me how to turn the Vocab Builder back on. So again, happy accident there. The last story, at school, I was lucky enough to work with 2 or 3 other Spanish bilingual paras in this classroom. About 30 to 50% of the kids were exposed to Spanish at home. And we just started a conversation and we talked about it, AAC, kind of like it's another modality. And I said, you've got a gift. You can model Spanish to this kid and that kid. And one of the favorite words, again, not chosen by us at all, was the word tú, for you. And so when the little guy touched tú on just a core board, it wasn't even a device, I said, tú, and I showed him, and we pointed at all our friends and we made them do things. And again, we were on our way. But because I stopped to have a conversation with the paraprofessionals, they really embraced it. And then they started telling me stories about the other words that these kids were using. Now, I'm lucky because they were able to model in both Spanish and English. But the teacher who didn't speak Spanish at all started to learn a few words in Spanish because everyone was modeling them. So, of course, I'm picking my success stories and only one where I find I was a failure. I failed that other family, but I learned a lot. This is a lovely low-tech resource. Again, this is all in your packet, but this is what I had used at that school where I had both the English and the Spanish. So the people that didn't know the Spanish could model because they had literacy, and often it's the same symbol. So it was a nice jumping off point. And the parents that didn't know English kind of liked it because they go, oh, I can start learning a couple more words in English with this. So,
Lydia, I want to ask you a question. Okay, so you guys that are watching, or maybe you don't know, but Lydia and I are both LAMP trainers, which means that we've worked closely with John and Cindy. We understand the language acquisition through motor planning approach to teaching communication on an AAC device. Are there any nuances about that intervention approach that you've noticed you do differently with people who are multilingual or bilingual? Or does the approach still hold true regardless of the language you're teaching?
it holds true no matter what, because one of the things when you're using a family-centered approach, which I do call a LAMP approach, it's often child-led. I do have the family pick the targets because, again, we're going with a routine, but part of the LAMP approach teaches words in a very meaningful way. So I find it works really well. And when I talk to parents that way, when I give them sort of a brief LAMP approach, I often say, if these parts of your mouth aren't coordinating and aren't cooperating with you, I can do it here. And they start to go, oh, I never really thought about it that way. And they start to see that the device is for more than just asking for stuff. It's a way to reflect language. And so I find it works beautifully. The thing, even if you know a LAMP approach, though, you still have to walk in with different families and be humble and learn from them and get their feedback. So yeah, but overall, again, there's joy, there's meaning, giving the child some control over their world, because parents often report, gosh, that's such a problem. They get so frustrated. This is a way to get control over other people. Sometimes if the parents aren't as comfortable with the device, if there is a sibling or a cousin or someone in the home, sometimes it's the sibling or the cousin that starts off with more modeling, because sometimes the parents might be not as tech savvy and a little bit hesitant.
I think that crosses all cultures. The young people know the way.
Some of this is just families, right?
Yeah, some of the best teachers I've met were 3 years old.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, I mean, in a nutshell, this is just a jumping off point. We don't have specific answers other than this, but I'm always self-reflecting. We could spend a little time looking at the app. Oh, this is kind of an aside, but it's something for you to think about. One of the authors that I quoted a lot of from the study, Kristen Monroe, was with Gloria Soto. They did a paper, and that's at the back, but she's doing a family-centered approach recruitment study. If anyone is interested, those of you that are speech language pathologists, you can go to the link or scan the QR code. This course goes live May 9th. You could look into it and see if you're eligible. It'll take about 3 hours. I'm going to do it because I'm excited to see what she's researching, but it's investigative and looking at AAC and looking at it from a solution-focused approach for families. Yeah, but something to think about.
And I did just grab that link and put it separately in the chat window. I do have, I think it's a great idea to open up some of these resources if you'd like, but I do have a couple of questions here waiting for you. Well, where do you recommend finding research for multilingual AAC?
There, I mean, if you just Google multilingual and AAC, or you Google Gloria Soto, I'm singing her praises because she has so much research on multilingual AAC, and it's a bit of a rabbit hole. There's so many articles on working with multilingual families and families that might have a different viewpoint, right? And so it gives you a starting off point. The Monroe and Soto 2025, one thing they did was a case study of a child who spoke Arabic, and they worked closely with the family. It's a case study, but they had some nice results from that case study. So again, I can't say her name enough, but look her up, San Francisco State. And she is the person who originated the Padlet with everyone's collaboration, professionals from all over, like a professional learning community. So yeah, we can look at those together. Just we could do a walkthrough if you all would see that.
You know, I know that in our field, we're really trying to be so aware of evidence-based informed practice. And correct me if I'm wrong, but in the field of AAC, where we are now, and our knowledge of things like what you're speaking about today, we are still in the early infancy stages of having robust evidence-based articles, research to back everything. We're very much in the beginning stages of that.
Yes,
But
very much so.
when I started practicing AAC in the late 90s, when I look back at that time, I feel like what I describe it as is like I was sailing across a sea and building my boat of knowledge as I sailed. It's like, oh, here's a log. I'm going to put this on, just really building it up as we sailed across because the research really isn't there. It wasn't there then, and we're still learning it now.
Definitely. What I do like about multilingual AAC, though, is that we can borrow some of that ethnographic, cultural, viewing the family system. Again, there are some outcomes that are emerging, but again, we can't say, oh, do this approach. This works the best. Now, the LAMP approach has some promising data. Do we need more? Yes. So, but I can feel good about it.
Well, let me run through these questions and then I think we'll have time to quickly show those resources. Caroline asked, when you are providing family trainings, how many do you typically offer and do they follow a sequence? She finds that there's so much to cover that they really need to be split, especially when using an interpreter. And she often underestimates the amount of time a family truly wants or needs.
This happens to me a lot. So in Arizona, it works differently because we use a state insurance system for many families. Some families have private insurance. You only get 4 1 to 1.5 hour sessions at a time. And so again, it's a little nerve-wracking because you go, I only have this much time. What am I going to do with my time? And I do know that working with interpreters can be a complication. Those of us that are in schools, we can make use of interpreters. There are more resources there. Again, I spend heavy time on the routines, but one of the first things I do is I do say, let's go through some of the techie stuff in terms of putting on passwords. Let's just do that right now, right? And then I don't get right away. I give an overview of the system, but I stop and I say, okay, I want to start with asking you a lot of questions about yourself, because that helps establish a lot of rapport and it gets family members talking. A lot of you know that phenomenon called the hand on the doorknob, big reveal. You talk with a family for 45 minutes and then you're kind of on your way out the door and something important comes at the end. That does happen a lot.
Yes.
So sometimes I say, if I front load all that stuff while I've got the interpreter, and I really just have them tell stories, and I really like to get those little parts. Now, the Padlet does have a way to structure that. Because also if you're working with an interpreter, you don't want the session to kind of get away from you and then you don't understand what's being said. So if you have a questionnaire framework of routines and priorities, who is the person, what's their world, then that also grounds the interpreter a little bit to go, oh yeah, we need to stay focused on compiling information. And I tell families, I say, I'm going to ask you some questions that you might think are personal and kind of nosy. You don't have to tell me if you don't want to. And they look at me like I'm nuts. But again, they will start telling me things after we've established rapport. But yeah, I only get 4 at a time, and then I have to ask for more. And the total is 12. So it's not a ton of time.
Yeah. So, but you start off with that initial interview and you gathering that information. I'm sure that guides your sequential sessions that you have with them.
Oh, and I will say, I will add, depending on the device, if the device has good tech support and reps in the area that can come support the family after, I always tell them, because you have this device and you have built-in support, here are the people you can continue to contact, even if insurance says no to more training.
That's good. All right. So here's, got 2 more questions. Anonymous says, I have a student who will use language scripts in his family's native language, which I don't speak. When they try to interpret his scripting, it's usually jargon. So native and non-native speakers don't know what the student is saying. Do you have any tips on how to support this student? Right now, they're acknowledging verbal communication and redirecting to pictures and activity symbols.
Yeah, so jargon is, we hear a lot of vocalizations that we may not be able to make sense of, right? So I go back to basics. And again, looking at a child-led approach, I try to think, what is the activity and word that that kid wants to say to boss me around so bad? So that's what I would start with, because we can't do much about those verbalizations if we don't understand what they're trying to tell us. Or try to be a detective. That didn't work very well. Keep it in your back of your mind though. But I try to teach, what is a word? What is this thing called up? Oh, when I say up, this happens. When I say down, this nice lady helps me go upside down on a sensory ball. Ooh, I kind of like her. And they start to pair that word. And in a LAMP-based approach, we know individuals have trouble with segmentation. Where does a word begin and end? So I would say start there, because that suggests that there's a little bit of a difference in what that individual may understand and be able to tell you. So it's kind of a, I would say that person needs to be at a beginning stage of just finding joy and what are the words that person wants to use to boss you around. And that,
yeah, I'm wondering if that particular question is referencing someone who uses more echolalia, or what we're calling gestalts from preferred media segments. So some of those same strategies where you're just trying to acknowledge that they've communicated something to you and make it as fun and pleasurable as possible, and then try to attribute meaning however you can, as best you can. Kate asks, is our last question now. I've gotten some mixed advice about using 2 languages in LAMP. Recently, I was advised to try to have the child use one at a time rather than mixing language 1 and language 2 during the same interaction. Do you have any thoughts about this, Lydia?
I have an opinion about that. Because I think a lot of people know some words in Spanish and some words in English, I work with both. I work with parents that are bilingual. They don't even realize they're saying some Spanish words. Even if the system was in English and the parent said, we're just going to go with English, and that's not my business, but I work with both. The only thing that, if you hit the message window, it's going to pronounce the whole sentence in whatever you last said's language or phonological system. So I just work one word by one word. And I think it's just fine to work in both. And again, some of that, and I don't know that your particular case. I don't want to speak about something that I'm not knowledgeable about. But I like to work in both, because I've also had parents tell me they get the impression that they shouldn't work in their own language. And I often say to them, it's fine if you want to go to 100% Spanish because you do 100% Spanish at home, do that. That's fine for you. I'm not going to say don't do it, but I would question why was the advice to just stay with one? Again, I don't have research on it. I don't think it's confusing if that's what you normally do. So I want that language to reflect what the family does. If the family is 100% Spanish all the time, then yeah, go in on Spanish. But if that little one goes to school, they might switch over to English too, because they hear things in English. So I like to acknowledge that. So I don't think there's anything wrong with it, but I always acknowledge the family preference, unless they tell me they heard somewhere that it's too confusing to learn two languages. That's where I differ. That's
Yeah.
not true.
Yeah, we have really good evidence to support that dual language learning process. And I think what I've read and understand is that holds true whether you're speaking with your mouth or your finger, that you'll see some of those similar patterns of a little bit more extended time and it needed to become more fluent. And I just reflecting on what I've done in the past with regards to that situation is going back to the family values aspect of it. What is a priority for the family regarding how they, is it a family value that their child learns English, or is it a family value that they really learn their native language?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And I've had some heartbreaking, I have had a parent say, the therapist recommended we don't choose bilingual software and that we only do English. And I looked at this mom and I said, wait, you prefer Spanish because we're speaking Spanish right now and you're very comfortable. I said, so when you model at home, what are you doing? And she says, oh, I try to use English. And I go, how's that going? And it's very stilted because that's not her strength.
yeah,
And I said, well, I support you in using the language that you value at home. And I shared, I said, research says that's not really true. So don't worry. Everything's going to be fine. But how are you going to communicate with your child?
yeah.
So,
Well, we have a few minutes left, and do you want to share your screen and get into some of those links?
I'll just share a little bit about some of those resources.
And while you're pulling that up, I just want to point out for those of you that are watching this recording, I'm going to put a link to the resource document in the description of this video. And those of you that are watching live, I've put it in the chat, and you will also get it via email.
So, I mean, there are so many resources here with this Padlet. The one that says SFSU, culturally and linguistically affirming. Here are multilingual resources. There's Spanish, there's some for Russian, Portuguese, Haitian Creole, Vietnamese. There's a Mandarin Facebook group, some in Arabic. This I haven't tried. I haven't looked at everything that's in here. It's overwhelming what's in here. How to do some boards in Cough Drop. Lamp Boards for Life manual boards. There are a few other languages. Again, everyone's still building. All About Me inventory that's kind of in the middle of your screen. That's a nice survey to find out more all about me. And there's one in Spanish, one in English. If we go, I'm going to go down a rabbit hole because I was looking into Vietnamese. If you click this Padlet, then you've got so many resources here. So there's so much information, it can be a little bit much, but those of you that have shared the languages that you're supporting, take a look around this Padlet and you will be pleasantly surprised at all these things it has to offer. What's another one I could show you? Is it this one? There's a website, Bilingual AAC, and this just sort of, some of this we're already doing, but this is a checklist just to check in with yourself. Am I doing these things? What do I prioritize? Like I said, I talk about routines and family questionnaire right away, because again, I'm working in someone's home. So that's for me. If it were school, I would do a climate of the classroom, but I would still find this information out from a parent. And I would say to the parent, how do you want me to communicate with you? Everyone loves email, but once in a while, a phone call or setting up a little bit of time with an interpreter. Again, I'm being idealistic, but I think it's worth it in the end. So that's a little bilingual checklist. There's also, I think it's this one. No, it's this one. There is another, I don't know if I saved it. There is another Padlet that is 100% in Spanish. If you are a confident bilingual Spanish speaker, or you want to give information to your families 100% in Spanish, that is included in your resources as well. But I'd make sure that you are, you're confident and that you can work in Spanish. And again, so that you can read these resources and pick and choose what you're going to share with your families.
Hey, Lydia, someone just asked about the Hmong language, Hmong. Since you're more familiar with these.
Yeah, I'm going to look. So if I'm not sure, there's a couple of things I do. I go into this search window.
Okay.
And I might type in Hmong. Oh, we don't have. I would almost say there's another resource that I regret I didn't put in, but you could also try. Has anyone heard of the NICA project? So the NICA project is a nonprofit. They work globally and they have kind of universal access resources for communication boards. That might be a good place to look. I am sorry that I don't have that right now, but it's something I could see if Gloria's gained any resources in that. But no, I don't see it right away. But I think that's good feedback if you want to reach out. And again, my email is on the slides. If you have questions about that and you need some help trying to find resources in that way, just remind us and I can try to answer that question for you or point you in the right direction. That is a really good.
Well, and the great thing about the resource document, hopefully everybody's been able to open up the one that I've shared that we created. But the great thing about that is that we'll update it with additional things as we find it. And then Padlets are easily updated as well. So I just put in Lydia's email address just in case anybody needs it, as well as the NICA project, because I'm going to check that one out too. Well, we have just a few more minutes. Do you want to, are there a couple more? Oh, goodness. Okay. Sorry, there were 4 questions. I'm going to answer them. I'm going to let you keep going there. So,
So this, again, this is just the school year of core, which already exists in English. And this one is just in Spanish. It's been a project of 2 SFSU students. Oh, here's the one that's dominant Spanish. So if you were to go to school year of core bilingual and you want another back door to get there. And it kind of has just some guidelines. What are some words? This is amazing. So, and again, you don't always need to speak the language. It's very helpful to have, but even if you're working on a couple of words, a couple of concepts in English, then you might model a word or two, right? So you don't have to be fluent, right? But it has suggestions what you can do. And again, those of you that have any paraprofessionals that might know some language, you can get started on thinking about a couple of concepts to model, again, within a meaningful routine, not in a lesson-based way, but in a routine. So just something to think about. What else can I share? This is the Spanish version of All About Me inventory. So again, there's one in English and there may be a few others, but if you're working with an interpreter, you can start to create some more of these in the language that you are supporting. And I think that might be it for the resources for now, but there are quite a few of them there.
And someone was asking, I think the Padlet that I put in the resource document is just the Spanish speaking one. So I'm glad somebody pointed that out. So I'll need to make sure I grab that English one for us English speaking folk.
Yes, I can also, let me go.
We'll make sure that's updated as soon as we are.
We'll update that so that you have that. Apologies. I might stop sharing.
Okay. Well, I feel like we've kind of reached a nice point here. I'm just going to double check these questions really quickly before looks like we've come to the end here. I'm going to stop our recording and just thank you all for attending. And we'll have a couple of housekeeping notes as soon as the recording ends. So I hope you guys have a great day and thanks for your time today.